So why the heck are we jumping straight to hormone therapy when we should be looking at everything below that, which are your health handbrakes? If we remove your health handbrakes, your hormones are going to be in a much more balanced position. You're not going to rely on medication or these short-term treatments.
Let's not forget, when we talk about integration and we have a more holistic approach, that many people actually destroy their relationships because of flow.
You feel so drained, why you feel so tired, why you don't sleep. And because there's so many things that you can learn from your blood. So that's the future with Lucy.
There were specific steps that I could take to promote and actually almost guarantee where every conflict resulted in growth, learning, and deeper connection.
Welcome to another episode of On Path Podcast, where our goal is to help you find self-alignment, optimize your health, and transform your life into one that is true to you. Today's episode is a special one because we feature a short clip from the last month's conversations, so you can jump around, you can have a feel for the topic and for the guest, and if you like what you hear, you can always dive deeper by visiting the full episode. For the guest featured today and the link to their episode, just check out the description. I hope you enjoy it.
If you're trying to have all this nutritious meals inside a apartment or house which has mold in it, your body is going to be in a sympathetic state. It's going to be stressed, which means it's in fight or flight. When in reality, what we need to be in when we eat is a parasympathetic state. Because if we just put into simple terms what a parasympathetic state is, it's rest and digest. Rest and digest. So if you're in that sympathetic state because your environment isn't favorable for you, then you're not going to be taking, assimilating, absorbing nutrients as effectively as what you could be, which is then going to have a host of effects on the rest of your health. And another one which I didn't mention, by the way, which is part of our foundations as well, is hydration and electrolytes. This is where a lot of people could take electrolytes, but if we look into most of the electrolytes which are marketed out there, they're very high in sodium. Does that person actually need more sodium or not? And then we've got the other factor that autoimmune is on the rise. And if we look into salt intake, because let's be honest, if we look into marketing online, again, it might actually advocate that salt is going to be very beneficial. But in reality, what it can cause is a Th17 response, which basically means it could cause an autoimmune flare-up. So although it may be good for one person, it doesn't mean it's going to be good for you necessarily. But this is why we need the blood work to find out exactly what is going on with you as an individual. As you can see, I'm very passionate about this.
Yeah, well, I can definitely see that, but you also have the experience with it already. So it's not just passion, it's also experience. So I know that you work a lot with entrepreneurs, founders, high achievers, people who really put themselves out there to accomplish something in their life. Can you maybe give a couple of examples from the people that you have worked with that had some sort of a breakthrough that did not come from psychological work like therapy or mindset, but from fixing their physiology?
Oh, wow. I've even got pet examples, believe it or not. I'll come on to that because it ties in nicely with this guy. So there's this one guy who's a men's leadership mentor. So obviously, as you can imagine, he runs a big program over in Spain for other males. Now, he was in a position where he knew something wasn't quite right. He just couldn't put his finger on it. When we got his blood work back, it actually showed severe candida overgrowth. So obviously, as we mentioned earlier, that can massively affect neurotransmitters, which then obviously affects the way in which he's showing up for himself. So this is where it gets more interesting. Because we put him on a candida approach and removed that, obviously that changed his life. But also what happened is his dog apparently had an incurable disease. Now, as he started explaining this to me, what I recognize is whether it's parasites or another sort of overgrowth, obviously what we have to recognize is that can obviously transmit from person to person or even from pet to person or person to pet. Like how our health is could affect our pets as well and vice versa. So when we went down the route of just trying things with his dog as well, he took his dogs back to the vet and they did a test. They did another test and another test. And they're like, this can't be happening. And he was like, what? Like he's almost started to get worried about it. And they were like, that disease is no longer there. But like, we never set that out as an expectation. But it just goes to show how many things you actually have to think about in order to optimize your health without overcomplicating it. But yeah, I really enjoy that story just because obviously it goes to show even if our pets are carrying a parasite, for example, that could then obviously pass on a parasite to us as well. So we have to be looking again into our environment. And when we say environment, it's not just the walls, it's the people we're with or the pets in which we're with as well.
So if I got this right, my dog can decrease my performance at work.
Yes, it could massively
Wow.
improve your performance, but it could also decrease your performance at work. So this is why we have to find out everything which is going on around you, which is why I say we don't just look at protocols, we look into people. And when we look into people, we look into everything to do with that person to truly be able to help them.
Wow, that's crazy.
Huge, isn't it?
So you mentioned something very interesting, which you call the hierarchy of health.
Yes.
What is the hierarchy of health?
Awesome. So I briefly explained that from a foundational level, but in a nutshell, what it does is it makes sure that nothing gets missed or overlooked, because I've had a lot of experience, as you said earlier. I've also worked with a lot of mentors and different practitioners myself through my own health challenges, and there always felt like there was something missed. So that isn't to blame anyone at all, but what it did allow the opportunity for was to recognize that actually there is a hierarchy approach to health. Like we have to be looking at things from a foundational level. Like you don't just build a roof on a house. Like we've got to build obviously the concrete layers first in order to build on. So that's where we look into the hierarchy of health. So we make sure all of that is in a optimal position, or as much of an optimal position as we can realistically get it into at that moment in time. For example, if your sleep is poor, can we try and optimize that as much as possible? So I'm going to try and explain this in the best way possible. But foundational levels, as mentioned, we've got upper GI function, we've got nutrient deficiencies, we've got mental health, we've got sleep, we've got hydration and electrolytes, and we've got your environment as well. Okay, so that's the foundation. We always need to be focused on that. The next layer is then when we start to look into your barrier integrity. So that's like I mentioned earlier with leaky gut or maybe blood-brain barrier compromised integrity as well. And we've got detoxification pathways and we've got drainage pathways, okay? So there's no point trying to go straight in with like detox protocols if you haven't got the foundation set up, because at the end of the day, coming back to the nutrient deficiencies, there's certain vitamins and minerals which are going to help with your liver detoxification pathways. So if you're deficient in them, why the heck are we going straight in with a detox protocol? It doesn't make sense, right? And another way that obviously we can look at that as well is, again, if we look into what helps with like detoxification, we could be looking into sleep. We could be looking into electrolyte balances. We could be looking into hydration. Like everyone says, in order to help flush things out and eliminate waste and toxins, you want to make sure you are as hydrated as your body possibly needs to be. So again, this saves us from jumping onto things too early. So that's like, we've got this nourish layer, we've got that restore layer, which is when we're looking into the barrier integrity, when we're looking into detoxification and drainage pathways. And then we've got the next layer, which is called the defend layer. And that's when we're looking into microbes, overgrowths, parasites. Because what we have to recognize here, all of these, of course, can be causing an overburden with your liver detoxification pathways. It could be affecting your sleep. But in reality, again, we can't just jump onto removing parasites. We can't just jump into removing bacterial overgrowth, because if we do that too early, that again is going to cause like an endotoxemia response. It's going to cause too much stress for the liver, because the liver isn't in a good position to eliminate and remove the toxins. So if we went straight in with antibiotics or antimicrobials, it's going to create this die-off effect, which could then harm our health even more. So now actually, by taking this foundational approach, this hierarchy of health approach, we make sure that the body is in a stable position in order to truly optimize itself. And another magical thing I've seen from this is we've got to a stage where we've just focused on the levels 1 and 2 before going in with antimicrobials, and we've seen actually the overgrowths have resolved themselves because of everything else we've done below that. Because we've got the body into a natural position in order to heal, we haven't had to go in with all these antibiotics or antimicrobials, because the body is now doing what the body should be doing naturally, eliminating, removing these toxins and overgrowths, putting itself into a more favorable position. So that's why we take this approach. And on that level as well, so I've touched on that, but level 4 is looking into blood sugar regulation and thyroid regulation, and level 5 is looking into hormones. Hormones is at the very top, which means it's the last thing that I'd actually focus on. Obviously, there's situations where I would look into it, don't get me wrong, but actually in reality, everything else below that affects your hormones. So if we look into blood sugar dysregulation, if we look into impaired liver detoxification pathways, if we look into parasites, if we look into poor sleep, all of that affects your hormones. So why the heck are we jumping straight to hormone therapy when we should be looking at everything below that, which are your health handbrakes? If we remove your health handbrakes, your hormones are going to be in a much more balanced position. You're not going to rely on medication or these short-term treatments. So this is why the hierarchy of health is so important.
So if I get this correctly, essentially what the hierarchy of health enables us to do is to put our body in a position where it can naturally heal itself rather than forcing the change or the healing through medication.
Yeah, I've seen people go with absolute nukes, even through the holistic realms as well. And that's where I'm looking at people taking so many antimicrobials in order to just remove a parasite or a bacterial overgrowth. And that's put them in a much worse position. And most of the times, I don't know if the audience is going to be able to relate to this, but sometimes you may feel a short-term relief from doing a protocol like that, but long-term, you're actually not in a better position at all. And that's because you skipped certain areas of health which need to be addressed first. If they haven't been optimized, then this is where you can be more susceptible to like infections again. So a fine example of this would be low stomach acid. Stomach acid declines as we age. If we've got low stomach acid, this can make us more susceptible to infections. So if the low stomach acid was the issue for us actually having a parasite or a bacterial overgrowth, and we've just gone in to then remove the parasite or the bacterial overgrowth, we've missed the main area, the root cause, which led us towards the susceptibility of actually getting that infection. So that's why 6 months later, you're back where like you were 6 months ago.
You know, like as I speak to more and more people on this podcast, everybody has their own unique approach. Some people are coming more from, let's say, like a spiritual realm. Somebody is coming from more like with a science background. But I start to see the overlaps here. So I had this podcast with Mikey Breeds. It's been like a month or so. And then we also touched on parasites. And he was saying that the reason why parasites are in your body is because you're a suitable host. So if you are not fixing the root cause, they are keep on going to be coming back. So if I take that statement and apply it on what you just explained, it's pretty much the hierarchy of health. That
yes.
Like if I'm able to fix like level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Then essentially like having this kind of like very quick fixes of like, you know, like a parasite cleanse or even like, yeah, like any of those quick protocols, maybe I have a momentary relief, but if I haven't fixed the underlying foundations, then it's just going to be keep on happening again. And I may have already damaged myself even more.
Yes,
by doing this kind of quick fixes.
Yeah, because a parasite cleanse in reality is a bunch of natural antimicrobials, or some people may decide to go down the conventional route and take antibiotics. But either way, we know that is going to cause some disruption with the gut microbiome. So now we're altering that. That's now changing everything else in the body, because we know obviously gut health is going to have a systemic effect. So if we suddenly alter that without knowing what the effects are from that, or without actually addressing the root cause, of course, we could end up even in a worse position than before. So we have to recognize that. So yeah, you've nailed that.
So then I guess like I just have an assumption what your take is on parasite cleanses, liver flushes. So can you maybe just explain like where do you stand on this protocol? So what do you think about parasite cleanse?
Okay, so I think they can have a time and place. But the problem is we still have to recognize that the body needs to be in a position in order to handle these cleanses, to handle these certain protocols. So again, if we look into the liver, that's on level 2. So if everything isn't addressed on level 1, then of course, we're not going to end up in a better position. Short-term relief maybe, but we know long-term, we're going to be better off. Dependent, obviously, it is very individual dependent, but we're still obviously, unfortunately, missing the hierarchy of health. And then with parasite cleanse, I think the problem with the parasite cleanse world at the moment is the fact that people have demonized parasites. This is going to be quite a cool one and probably something in which you didn't expect me to say, but parasites aren't always the devil. Parasites can actually be very protective for the body. So can candida. That's why candida can show up more when a person is stressed. So what we have to recognize is actually how to reduce stress for that person, whether that be mentally or physiologically, in order to then get them into a position where they're not at risk of getting candida. The same with parasites. If we look into parasites, parasites are actually used for autoimmune therapy. So all of a sudden we're thinking, wow, so actually these parasites could be doing a good job for me. I've worked with so many clients where I put their foundational levels and level 2 in a better position where they've started to pass parasites naturally, which meant they didn't need to do some harsh cleanse, which could have left them off in a worse position. That's how I feel about it.
What does true work-life integration actually look like for someone who works in a fast-paced or purpose-driven life?
It always has to start at the individual level. I really believe, and just to reflect on what you mentioned about the type of lifestyle about or work style, when they allow you unlimited amount of leaves, it also, studies came out that actually it has a huge backside as well. And it's also very much depends on the culture where it's being implemented, because certain companies which tried this in Asia, do you know where it ended up? No one were taking any leaves. And then they started to burn out way quicker. Because it works very well. And I think like in a culture or in a country like Canada, this is extremely feasible, right? Trust is extremely important in that situation. And also to have very clear outcomes, what is expected from the employees to achieve. Because like when I worked with Mindvalley, and I spent close to a decade there, we didn't have this opportunity to take leaves whenever we wanted, and actually I was really grateful for it, but we had the chance to go to work whenever we wanted. Needless to say, if you were working on a project or an event, you had to follow the guidelines. But when you were doing office work, which I wasn't doing too much because I was visiting our clients, I was doing trainings all over the world. So for me, it was a bit different. But then we also had this what's so-called morning autonomy. So till 11 a.m., we didn't have meetings. You could work if you wanted, but the meetings only started after that time, and they give us this freedom. And for me, and mostly operating most of the time in Asia, I find it good that, we had a certain set of dates. Also, I spent a significant amount of time in Malaysia, which is like number one in the world with public holidays. So there were so many long weekends, and it was good to know that, okay, we have a set time of holidays, let's say 20 days a year, and that's your budget, which you can play around. And of course, we did have location independence. So I think that was very ideal. And again, different countries are testing different ideas, but definitely you need to have certain rules. It sounds very good that when you said, okay, employees have the complete freedom, but it's just like when you give freedom to children who are too young. And maybe it's not always ending up well, right? Because they're not really aware of what's benefiting them the most in the long term. And again, Dubai, as I mentioned, is very innovative. They want to learn the best approaches from all over the world, but also they have their own cultural setting, right? So when we worked there, we really wanted to find that way, to implement it into the local culture. Like we worked with the ministry over there, had meetings with one of the ministers about how to increase productivity and well-being of their government employees. That was a project involved 65,000 people who worked for the government, right? And it was really interesting to custom tailor a solution based on their religious needs, the cultural needs, and it's also a very multicultural environment, even within the government or government employees. So there is not a simple solution or one which could work for everyone, but definitely there are certain initiatives which are extremely good and extremely potent for the employees to make sure that their mental well-being is optimized.
And I also know that some companies, mainly I heard about them in Europe, that they have an allocated budget that they spend on their employees' well-being. So it's not just that they give them more time off, but also a certain amount of money that you can spend on gym membership or massages or I don't know, further educating yourself, like how you can find this kind of like work-life balance that would be more suitable for yourself. And I just found it super interesting because they also did the study that the moment the company starts investing more into these kind of areas for their employees, people are less likely to get sick, less likely to burn out, less likely to take a day off and holidays. So at the end of the day, it was actually in a net profit for them to have those expenses. So what were some of the best practices you have seen in different industries that companies may have done for their employees in order to increase their productivity?
Yes, definitely there are certain techniques or ways to do it. Just as you mentioned, the perks, right? Wellness initiatives, gym memberships. What I've seen as the best working one is always the committed leader. I can't emphasize the importance of the leader being committed to the cause and displayed as someone who embraces these values about that it's important for you to take rest, it's important to take care of your mental, physical health, right? And obviously, most of my projects, even though I work globally, also in South America, North America, but 80% of the time I spent it around Asia and the Middle East in the last years. There, it's significantly true that it's all coming from the leaders, because also it's more like a top-down approach, right? Meanwhile, in Europe or in America, it's a bit different. There, the individual initiatives are way more stronger, and people have more freedom or drive, to choose their own strategies for optimized mental well-being. But in this region, I noticed that it's the leader. The leader is the most important, and then only comes the certain options. Otherwise, you can give them whatever they want, they're just not going to take it. It's very surprising to see that very often there are significant well-being budgets and solutions offered, and it happened that only a single-digit % of the employees actually use them.
Why?
No, it's all about social pressure as well, in my opinion. It's just going back to that example when you have unlimited leaves, right? But it's not 100% clearly defined about what are the expectations, then work is just never ending. And this is also one of the biggest challenge of work-life balance, because again, the 9 to 5, if we think about how it evolved in the last hundreds of years, coming from the Industrial Revolution, this came from the factories, but it was extremely clear what were your duties there, right? There is no part in a assembly line to have freedom about when you go in. I mean, the whole process would fail. But, many people are despising these times and they look at that, that was terrible and we should never ever go back. But there was a huge benefit as well, which meant that work ended at 5 p.m. You were aware that it ended, and then that next day at 8 or 9 it's going to continue. Yeah, it's very monotonous. I wouldn't want to do that. Let's be frank, right? To go back. And I think most of us just don't want this anymore. But I think even some of our parents had a work environment like this. And when we look at mental well-being, actually this type of environment is fairly supporting mental well-being and work-life balance or even integration. The challenge comes when it's not clearly defined when work starts and where it ends. And that creates the biggest challenges. And that's why this whole idea came up about the importance of mental well-being at work.
I think it's also very much a mindset thing, because my employer can tell me that, okay, Adam, you need to come to work at 9 and you can go home at 5. But knowing myself, I'm not going to stop there. And I think it's just in my nature. And I know that there's so many people out there who is going to resonate with this, what I'm about to say. But if you are an ambitious person, I think this is also an advantage and disadvantage at the same time, because you're definitely driven by something that you want to create something greater than yourself, and you are willing to put in the work, and you are open not to see the rewards right now. You are investing in your future. But at the same time, what it also means is that it never ends. So you have to have crazy self-discipline to know okay, I need to stop right now. Otherwise, I can just work from the moment I woke up until I go to bed. And obviously, it's going to impact my health as well. Have you seen this kind of patterns on other highly ambitious people, maybe like yourself?
100%, not just at work, but also at sports, right? So this is something very interesting because we all know from the work of our countryman, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, about the benefits of flow. And actually, we noticed lately, as much as I'm supporting his theories, that it's been a bit over used in a way that flow is an extremely beneficial state of mind. It's a mental state, right, where you are operating from. But it is, if you think about performing well, but again, it can be performing in art, in sports. But also, let's not forget, when we talk about integration and we have a more holistic approach, that many people actually destroy their relationships because of flow. Because, I mean, or not needless to say about, it's a bit of an extreme example, but we know certain addictions like video games where certain people just died. They just played for days without eating or going to the washroom and passed away. Where dozens of cases happened. It's very rare, right? And it's a bit of an extreme. But when you look at for competitive sports, which is one of my favorite examples, because this is also where I have most of the experience, is that it can be extremely addictive. So I also reached to this stage in my life when I start to question, and not just me, but other experts as well, if this is the highest level where you can reach. Because to be honest, 10, 15 years ago, I thought that, listen, if you are in flow all the day, what else do you want, right? You achieved everything. You are motivated. We also can say you are happy during, you are fully immersed, you are fully focused, you do your passion, what you love, you wake up in the morning, it's just the whole day is just flowing, and it's amazing. Exactly. As long as you are not reaching a point where you compromise your health, compromise your relationships, or any other important elements of life. So we always have to add this to this equation when we're talking about flow and how it optimizes performance.
So what would you optimize for then?
We have to look at, there are so many models out there, we call also the life wheels, or they also say, the 5 Fs, like family, faith, finance, fitness, friends. You define as you want. Or there is the very famous life book program, which is looking into 12 categories of life. And all of these are great. Now, from my own personal experience, and also with the high performers I worked with, it's extremely important to be focused, right? It's, I think, the lowest hanging fruit, and for everyone listening this, the best thing you can do very quick to help yourself with this is to define your top 5 values in your life, but the most important. Of course, you can go till 10. And based on those, you can start to work on the next steps. But don't forget that values very often changing and shifting. And this is great because if you think about it from a psychological perspective, values are often coming from voids. But once they are filled, there's immediately a need to seek for something more. So it's completely right if these are shifting and changing. But also, there's also in the world of personal development, I did notice that there is this big chase of perfection, of when you want to just over optimize everything. And I always say that instead of this, it's rather to focus on the frictions, the significant challenges which are actually making you struggling and unhappy. Because we have this idea that the more we achieve, the more we get, the happier relationship we have, it's just the better. But the challenge is that actually I know many people, I know one person who has a net worth of 100 times of person B, but he's not 100 times happier. Actually, it can be even reversed, but I also know someone who has a very happy relationship, but other significant areas of life, like health or his family relationships, are struggling. And that's a huge issue, right? So what I always recommend to everyone, that when you look at the most important, we can agree, there is nothing without health. Also, that's the theme of your podcast. It's not the only reason why I'm saying, I think it's more than obvious. And the challenge with health is that you don't notice the lack of it till it's gone. or you struggle with something, but very often it's difficult to come back from there. So it's just taking it granted. For certain people, it's finances. They take it granted that they were coming from a wealthy environment, and until it's being taken away, they don't recognize this. But this can be the same with relationships. So we all know that, again, there can be so many frameworks and theories, but I think every adult person has the potential and the self-knowledge to at least define the most important core areas, which matters the most for you to be fulfilled and happy. And once you have it, you need to decide, okay, what are the things that you definitely don't want to tolerate, or you don't want to take on? Like it's a certain income stream which you think is important in order to sustain your family, to your most important values, the hobbies you like to do. Or also with your family, you just don't tolerate bad relationships, ignoring each other. Just like the same with fitness, a point that if you keep going like this, there is a significant risk that if you live a lifestyle which causing these health challenges, then it's going to have significant ramifications. So I always like to start, even though it doesn't sound too fancy, and that it's a bit of an opposite approach, what's being recommended there, but I always say remove the frictions. And I always notice that whenever I face with challenges or certain level of anxiety or stress, it's always coming from that the most important life areas and categories for me are struggling. And then immediately, instead of setting a high goal, like, okay, I want to add another country to my list, which I want to visit, or I want to make X amount of money, very often I realize that it's way smarter to eliminate certain challenges in my relationships instead of focusing on the next shiny object. And needless to mention that how our world works, and we talk a lot about motivation. I rather believe in inspiration, because a lot of things can, which means that there's a difference, is that motivation is rather focusing on the external rewards, right? But inspiration is more like coming from the inside. And when we look at different life areas, the most prevalent one, health, finance, family, or love and relationships, the biggest trap with career and entrepreneurship is that among these, money and finance is the one which is the easiest to track. That's the easiest where we get reminded. Let's say you want to think about your relationship and you want to have an optimal relationship with your parents or with your loved ones or with your partner. You don't get reminders until things are really going south and really bad. Then you get loud reminders about it. But if you look at your finances or your business, you get multiple notifications on your phone about your bank accounts, about your CRM systems, about the views on Instagram or YouTube. So everything is extremely easy to measure, right? And I always loved on the beginning of my journey in personal development, which dates back to 20 years. And one of the first books I read was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey. I think many of us have read it, but probably my favorite idea from that book was called about the emotional bank account. That just as there were no smartphones back then, right? People were rather writing their finances or they got bank letters. And he mentioned this idea that actually you should have that account for your emotional relationships and you need to check into it.
I would rather trust what my body tells through the biomarkers and with a dedicated support team that's going to help me interpret what my body says is good, bad, working, not working, versus someone who I just saw on TikTok and tell like, Adam, like, that's what you should try, that's what you should eat, right? So like literally like your body is communicating, and what you are doing is that you are translating what your body says into actionable steps. So I can follow and I can take care of myself. So you already mentioned a couple of things throughout the conversation that your solution can help people to prevent. Can you maybe give a couple of other examples, like what kind of conditions or diseases can be prevented through regular biomarker or blood testing?
Yeah. So first, there's a stats in the healthcare systems in Europe that says that 50% of cancer are detected too late. So it means that through regular blood testing, probably you won't really like avoid this like 50% of like a cancer, but you would help like people probably fight these diseases early on. And we know that in cancer, like being very early on the issues can really increase your chance of living. So that's the first thing. We also tells like 80% of like the disease could be prevented if they were like chronic diseases would be prevented if they were detected earlier. So diabetes, cardiovascular issues, there's like high blood pressures, um, a small imbalance in your nutrients could lead to inflammation. Inflammation could lead to like issues with your thyroids, and then you would have hormonal imbalance and etc. etc. So things escalates and it gets worse. So that's all the things that you can prevent on seeing like early like markers going off, and like we said, it's way much easier, Adam, to like correct a nutrient imbalance or an hormonal imbalance when early on than trying to fix a disease later. So reverse diabetes is way much complicated. It's sometimes impossible, but it's way much impossible than like just fighting this like pre-diabetic, even like before this pre-diabetic condition where you see your glycemic index like going up, and you say, okay, I need to change things and I need to change course. And that's when you gonna change things, and that will have a huge impact on your life. And probably there's a stats also, and last, that you live on average, men live until 80 years old in Europe or in France or like whatever the stat is, and but we know that the health span life is 10 years below that. It means that you probably gonna live to 80, but you probably live without any issues only till 65 to 70. And then you'll live 10 to 15 years with like issues. So that's what we're trying to prevent, is that um, you live until the end, you live in good condition, you live, you have the power to decide, you have the the control of like your body, and you don't lose like the control, and you're in good health, and you enjoy life till the end. And that's the goal, the ultimate goal. Probably not living to like forever like some people want, but just like having a better and healthier, longer health span, as we say in English. It's funny because this word doesn't exist in French. So the health plan word doesn't exist. You have to use a sentence to describe that. So yeah.
I don't even know if it exists in my mother tongue. Originally, I'm from Hungary, and I'm just trying to say it in Hungarian. I don't even know if there is a word for it either.
Probably not.
But yeah. So when we talk about like longevity in general, so when I think about longevity, like there's a couple of elements of that. So which would be like regular movement, nutrition, regeneration, and being part of a community. So that was also kind of like proven through, studying different blue
The blue
zones.
zone, yeah.
So what's the role of community in your ecosystem?
Yeah, I like the question. Thanks for asking. Um, so we started so the Zero Health, and by the way, we changed the name, so we haven't talked too much about that, but we are called Lucy. But the Zero Health play and Lucy started from a community. So 2 years ago, we realized with my partners that there was like we were interested, like there was like this Brian Johnson blueprints starting to like being very famous within I mean, it was the beginning. So within the tech industry, like all the tech people were starting to look at this blueprint and what it was doing and the data it was sharing, and it was so much interesting. So I got into that super early because I was really into health for years, and I was really like following all the trends. So I saw like Brian starting to do some experimentation. I was very interested as soon as he was starting to share his experimentation. And then at some point we realized, so the my other associate in the company is called Max as well, and Baptiste, and so there's two Max. And with Max, we realized it was like we were very into Blueprint, and there was something like people were talking about that. So we started like this community in France and in Europe, and it got bigger. Like people started to join, people wanted to like exchange, to talk, to share their learnings, share their experience, and we realized, okay, and also people wanted to meet in person, so we started to do IRL meetups in France, and other community members started to organize like meetups in other like European countries. So that was really really exciting. So and the community role is really like using so when you feel that you're interested into health and you want to optimize your health and you want to, it's a lot today, it comes to a lot of experimentation, it comes to done to a lot of learnings, and you want to share that with people. And so in health we've been like talking about that for years. It's called accountability partners. So that's why clinics works, is that you go there and they start coaching you, and you have a coach. And especially for the gym, you have the same thing. Your coach is like calling you, today you need to come to the gym, and you say, okay, I'm too lazy, now you come. And that's so the community is playing that role, in the sense that you share with others, you share your struggle, you share your accomplishment, and you feel empowered to like learn from the others. And so we started with this community. Now we're building that product, but the everything we do with the product, we have this community in mind, and we're trying to like sort of like what we call in tech productize this community, all the learnings, all the things. And if you go on Reddit, and you'll see it's already happening. There's people saying like, okay, I reversed my high cholesterol, HDL, like low LDL. I reversed that in 6 months by applying that. And people are really like, whoa, this is insane, and blah, blah, blah. And now we have the data to prove that. So it's interesting. It's still like bias in a way that people share their experience, and it's still experience, but we are making progress. That's what is exciting about Brian Johnson, is sharing his progress, and we know it's not scientifically good, in a term that it's not a randomized trial with like multiple people, etc. But still, it's a progress. We're learning, people trying things, and they're sharing with others, and this has been around for years, and we're just trying to like, the community is helping you with that. So that's why the community is so important right now, especially in health.
I think it's bigger than most people would even assume, because when you're optimizing your health or you are trying to do something good for yourself, it's only you who is doing that for yourself. And it can be a very, very lonely process. And like having that kind of sense of belonging that, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not alone on this journey. That's huge. That's huge. Your success rate, increases by like 80%.
Oh yeah.
If you are surrounded by people who are on a similar journey and they actually hold you accountable. And yeah, so it's massive. I also ran a couple of biohacking meetups here in Bali as well.
Okay.
And I really feel that it connects people who already have similar values, because the fact that I'm already taking care of myself, and then that guy is also taking care of himself, like, oh, we already have like a connection point. And guess what? Like, this is going to be my new environment. And this is where they also say that you are always the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So like, why not to surround yourself with healthy people? Yeah. So guess what? You are going to be another healthy person if you are surrounding yourself with those kind of individuals.
I agree. And I always felt that I wanted to like meet people like me, and that's exactly what you do. Is that with a community, when you join that community, you feel you found your tribes. Like, they don't look at you like you are a weird person when you say, oh, I'm biohacking this, I'm trying this. And they're just like, okay, I did try that, and you're like, wow, really? That's amazing. And suddenly you have a context together, and that's super helpful. So yeah, that's exactly what the community is doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. Because yesterday I went on a lunch and we were talking about the exact same topics with my friends. We were talking about like what I eat. Okay, I don't order food anymore. We cook at home, and then
Mm,
my digestion improved this much. Okay, great. Then the second thing, like, oh, are you using a shower filter? No. Should I use a shower filter?
yeah.
Okay. Then why? What's it going to help? It's going to help you with like, thinning hair. And like if you look at me, I definitely could use some of that help as well. And then I was showing them that like living in Bali, like sometimes the pollution is absolutely mental. So I
Yeah.
got this like very small air quality monitor.
Hmm.
So at least it gives me an idea when is it that maybe I should close the door, open the door, change the air, all of that stuff. It kind of creates a bit of paranoia as well, but that's what it is. At least I'm informed. But anyhow, like that kind of sense of belonging is huge in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
When you look at the next 5 to 10 years, like what are some of the other key like health trends that you foresee happening?
There's probably gonna be like trends around like, so there's always trends around nutrition, so supplements and all these things, they're getting massive, and we're doing a lot of discoveries. So I don't believe there will be one pills that's all every magic pills that will like avoid you to have diseases and live to hundreds of blah blah blah. But I think it's more improvement steps that you have to take on a daily basis. But still, there will be some progress on that, and especially with like cells. I forgot the name. Sorry. Injection like
Stem
oh
cells.
yeah, the stem cells. Like I'm very excited about that. I think this is going to be massive in terms of like learnings and how we can help you solve issues like with your body and rejuvenate part of your body. So this is a field. We're really at the beginning of like the learnings, and I know Brian Johnson have done so some of them, and I don't know. The the future will tell us if he was right to do it. But it's cool that there's some people that is trying that for us. But I'm very excited about that, and also like I think the trends like what we are working on is very exciting me in a way that today is probably the early days and the tip of the iceberg, but like making sense of all your personal health data at some point will be super, 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 super detailed and so powerful that you're gonna learn so much about yourself that you'll be able to correct things very, very quickly. That's what is very exciting, is that knowing what you're doing is working or not. And so today is like blood test, and we're starting with that, but there's people doing like a full body MRI. You have people doing DEXA scans, and you have people doing um, like many other like small like things like that. And at some point, all these things will converge, and you have these like super like easy access services where you get all your markers, all your blah blah blah, and you'll be like on a regular basis, and will be able to catch trends before they rise, and that's is very exciting in the next 5-10 years. So, and I also see a system where we'll shift. Probably the industries will change as well on the food, on like the supplements. Like people are really, and that's comes to the people when the new trends arise, is like it comes down to the people when they buy things, they ask more things of that and that, and you get the truth on a daily basis. And in the supplement industry, there has been a lot of scams about like you should take this and this, and like the quality of the supplement was shitty, and there was like high level of toxins and like metals on like heavy metals and stuff like that. And now I think people got educated about that, and they're asking more and more tests and more like trusts and brands, the new brands that are like um, evolving, emerging today. They're like more and more into that. So I think that's what I'm excited for. I think we're gonna clean all the things that we're doing around us, like all the supplements, the food, the drinks, and everything. And we're starting to get aware of like all these issues and all this cancer rising and all these diabetes rising and everything. So that's what excited me the most, I would say, and that will be the biggest trend in the next 5 years to me, 10 years to me.
What does the world look like if Zero Health now, Lucy, is going to succeed?
We're gonna help people live healthier longer. You're gonna be happier because you don't have to. You're gonna be better, more energized, more conscious. Um, we're gonna help you learn so much about yourself that you're gonna feel better, and you're not gonna be um, blind about your health and not knowing exactly what to do, what's working well, what's not working, why you feel so drained, actually, why you feel so tired, why you don't sleep, and because there's so many things that you can learn from your blood. So that's the future with Lucy, is that you're gonna have someone that really take care of you and that knows you, truly knows you, and will help you on a daily basis. That's the future of what we're building.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I have prepared a couple of fire questions for you.
Okay.
So some short questions and punchy answers.
Oh, well, okay.
Are you ready?
I'll try to do my best.
Okay, so it's a mix of personal and professional as well, and
Okay.
you can choose which one you are going to answer or not.
All right.
So question number 1, how long do you personally think you can live?
Oh, wow. 100 years. 100 years.
100?
Yeah, 100 years. I think I can do it. My grandmother did.
Well, then, like, with everything that you guys are doing, you should live at least 200, no?
Yeah, I
If
don't
your
know.
grandma
I don't
lived
wanna.
without Lucy.
Yeah, probably. No, I don't know. I don't know. My goal is to see my kids. Um, yeah, I'm gonna be in plan power of my abilities and in plain sight, and I'm gonna be able to raise my kid for a long time, see them grow and like see them thrive and be a real persons and be adults, and I'll be there for them when they get kids and everything. So that's my goal. So ultimately, living to 100 in good health is my goal. The rest we'll see. After that, we'll see.
The rest is an extra.
Yeah, exactly. The rest is an extra. That's exactly the answer. This will be the cherry on the cake.
If you could only do one test for your health for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
The Lucy test.
So I guess like within Lucy, like you guys do like multiple tests as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you mean like, okay, so
So
you mean like a couple of like markers, or like so if, well, it's hard to it's hard to pick, but I would say probably I would answer HbA1c, which is like a marker for like the glucose level in the past 2-3 months in your blood, and because like the metabolism, so HbA1c is connected to your metabolism, and that's probably the foundation of everything. So if you make sure you have a good glucose levels and everything, you probably won't develop a ton of things. So that's the number one things I would get tested on for the rest of my life.
I still need to do that. I haven't done that.
Okay, you need.
So what's the single best decision you have made for your health and performance?
So I think to get tested. So when I realized years ago that I needed to like get tested to learn what's my body, how my body was reacting to things, I discovered that I had high cortisol level and so connected to stress. I never thought about being a stressed person, but I realized I was inside, and especially in the morning, and my cortisol level was impacting my glucose level. And that's why like keto diet was not working for me. So yeah, so that's how I changed my nutrition, changed how I was like doing like the intermittent fasting things. And yeah, so it had so much impact on me, on my sleep, and how I recover that honestly, I would that's it get tested.
So let's say that, okay, I have attracted the partner, a partner. Like, how do I know that that person is still the right person for me?
There's many layers to it, and as I mentioned, the 5 layers of alignment, they look at compatibility, because you can a lot of people talk about relationships and they throw things like polarity, which means like, oh, people who are very different to each other, they will be interested in each other. Yes, but no. And what I mean by that is, if there is worlds of difference, it is attractive at the beginning because you are forced to see someone else's life very differently, and then you still have maybe physical attraction or some form of emotional attraction, or even outright trauma bonding, which is very, very strong as well. But then when you really look at it, it most likely it will become a 2 to 3 month fling, because when this, let's call this honeymoon phase is down, and it's 2-3 months later, you end up seeing that you're exerting so much energy to actually connect with the person, because you need to go out of your way, out of your lifestyle, out of your alignment with your daily or weekly work or plans and your vision and mission as a man, to really cater to the relationship. And that's exactly what you want to avoid by aligning yourself with your needs, wants, and desires, and those 5 layers, to see the foundational blocks of it. And when that obviously is clicked and aligned, and it's not like a checklist of, okay, she does this. It's more about a stronger and more deeper layers of alignment, rather than seeing, okay, if she is able to cook, that's already enough for me. But that can mean that she can cook, but then she's not emotionally available, or she's completely avoidant when it comes to any commitments. So there's, within those compatibility layers, all of them are very important. And what I mean by that, I've seen it in myself and a lot of these men. They would settle for specific, let's say, if the values align, they're like, oh wow, this is great, because in my previous relationship I didn't have any of these alignments. And then they go in the relationship when only 1 out of 5 layers is aligned. And then they learn the lesson, because it will not work, in my opinion, long term, if all 5 layers are not aligned. And what I mean by that, I'll give an example. Values are aligned, so the person is truthful, they're kind, they're compassionate, they're emotionally available. Then the deal breakers and non-negotiables also there, and everything is aligned. Then emotional maturity there. But then you come to a long-term vision, and the person is working, for example, towards completely different goal in their life than you. For example, a man wants to settle, have a family, have 2-3 kids, provide, create a homestead. A woman is focused right now because she's younger, let's say, and she is focusing on building her personal brand in whatever she's doing, or she wants to create a business, or she's outright just focused on her career. Even though all the other layers are aligned, long term, I do not believe that it will work, because the actual end goal for those 2 people is different.
Can you just very quickly walk us through what are the 5 layers?
Sure. I've mentioned most of them right now. So the first layer will be values. So deep personal values. Secondly, we have non-negotiables and deal breakers. So for example, if someone is a smoker and you know that you will not connect with someone who smokes, then that's out. And a lot of times men are compromising on a lot of non-negotiables, and then like, oh yeah, everything else is good, I'll continue, because they believe, if they, coming back to what you said, that you end up trying to save the woman or fix her. That's not going to work. And a lot of times they skip some things because they think it will change. It will not change. The third layer is their specific emotional maturity and how they're able to deal with things like conflicts, nervous system regulation, emotional regulation, all these things. Then their emotional availability. And then we have a fourth layer where it comes to their exact lifestyle. So, for example, if you are completely free where it comes to time and resources and money freedom, and you can live anywhere, and then you meet someone who is on holiday here, for example, in Bali, but they normally have a 9-to-5 job in Netherlands, France, or wherever they came from, that's a strong misalignment, because that person doesn't have that lifestyle that you already have. And merging that, if there is no specific already plan in place, for, let's say, for that woman to leave her 9-to-5 job and is working towards being completely, let's say, location independent, that is most likely will be a complete misalignment. And the last one is that I've mentioned is the vision of the life and the purpose of that person's life. So that was the last example I gave you just before you asked, where if someone doesn't want to create a family and is focused on career, and now you want to settle, they will repel that to the point where, and this was exactly the downfall of my relationship, where I aligned with a lot of layers. I have to say emotional maturity was not well for me, and that was the reason that I couldn't see the alignment and misalignment of my wife at the time as emotionally mature as well, because I was. And this is something that I also would love to mention now, is that all these 5 layers, you need to be aligned and be able to reflect yourself and be really honest with yourself and know all of them, so then you can align with the other person. So in the short, I would say, if you can't provide all the alignment for yourself and have these expectations from someone, you need to be able to provide it yourself. Where it comes to the last part, what I was sharing about my misalignment, I realized that the reason because my values were very strong for family and I was family orientated, the only reason I left my corporate job was to create family. And that was the initial agreement with my wife. Later on, I allowed her to misalign our visions, and she went into learning again, and then she ended up working for Google. She ended up working and having, let's say, starting her career, and I've allowed that, again, this was on me, that I allowed her to put career first over what we agreed initially as a family. And that was the downfall of our whole marriage.
You mentioned a lot of great things here, and I feel that every single one of these layers could be a podcast on their own. There's one thing that I really would like to dive deeper into. You mentioned conflict. I feel that a lot of people struggle to handle conflict. And also from my surrounding, my friends, and including myself as well in the past, I felt that I was so much better at handling conflict at work than at home within my relationship. So can you maybe talk a little bit about conflict and conflict resolution?
Of course, that's something that I'm really, really passionate about in general when it comes to relationships, but also just in life. To give you a little bit of background, I came from a place where, as a nice guy and people pleaser, I was petrified. I was so afraid of conflict that it would literally paralyze me to the point where I would either fight, flight, or just like completely freeze. And that I was in very unregulated nervous system because I've had a lot of conflict in my family, and that showed and my patterns in relationships as well. I would rather keep the peace by self-sacrificing my own needs so I didn't have to go to conflict. It was the kryptonite to the Superman for me. And later on in my life, it caused the most problems was exactly this, where I was avoiding conflict and selling myself short. So the biggest breakthrough for me in my all relationships through my life was when I started working on conflict. And this was like just eureka for me, where I realized this was the missing puzzle, this was the missing piece of how I can literally relate to everyone in my life, including myself, because I've had a lot of internal conflict as a people pleaser, because on one side I wanted to be loved and appreciated, but on the other side, to receive that, I needed to put on a mask and then forego and self-sacrifice. And that's already an internal conflict, which I didn't know how to deal with. So I would start with that, where anyone who has issues with conflict and is afraid of conflict, I would say that one thing that they could do is see what internal conflict they have in themselves, to see how they can alchemize that and work on their shadows and the conflicts that they have within, to be able to then step into the conflicts and outside, with their family, with their spouse, with their friends, with their colleagues in work. So that would be one layer. Secondly, where it comes to actually starting to work on conflict resolution, one very, very important part is to be able to set the stage for any type of conflict. But before you do that, you need to accept that this is the only way for connection. I came from a place where I was afraid, but at some stage I needed to come into conflict to resolve the internal conflict and then conflicts with others. What ended up happening, I did it by trial and error. And over the years, I realized that there was specific steps that I could take to promote and actually almost guarantee where every conflict resulted in growth, learning, and deeper connection. So this is something that I would love to share with everyone right now. And first step would be setting the stage internally with yourself, that every time you feel conflict, you will speak about it in a non-violent way. What does that mean? That means that you would have to reestablish your boundaries with the person that has conflict with you. So where it comes to that, I would say that to reestablish boundaries with someone, you have to be able to know what your boundaries are. So that would be number one thing. Secondly, where it comes to agreeing with those boundaries, you'll have to say to the person and unapologetically set the fact that push that boundary. So we have F, and or. So fact, feeling, need, and request. So to reestablish boundary with someone within a beginning of conflict would be state the fact to the person that crossed your boundary and their behavior. Then secondly, state and share the feelings that whatever they did made you feel. Then next, align yourself with what you need in their behavior to change. So, and how you want to feel where it comes to the situation in the future. And lastly, request from them specific change that would guarantee that you don't feel those negative emotions and your boundaries being crossed. So these 4 steps, F, and or. Fact, feeling, need, and request. And when you're able to share the boundaries, that's number one skill to have to enter to any conflict. Because when you enter into a conflict with someone, when you blame them and you say, listen, what you did was wrong, immediately that person would feel attacked. And instead of actually stepping into a non-violent resolution with you, they will become defensive like everyone else. And if I'm attacked in this way, I will also even though I know all these tactics, I would also become defensive because it's our nature to feel, to create safety and defend ourselves when we are attacked. So that will be number one thing and the skill that someone needs to have to actually enter into a conflict resolution. As I mentioned, the overarching theme is win-win situation. You want to create a space and a container where you enter a conflict and say to someone, listen, I'm coming to you with this because I feel something that was not right for me, and I will reestablish these boundaries. But also, I want you to know that I'm coming here to this space and to create it with you so we can learn, we can resolve this, and we're both happy how we can move forward. So that will be number one thing. Secondly, when you enter conflict, you need to come with, as you see here, 2 ears, 1 mouth. That means we listen first and then we respond. And we respond, but firstly, by reiterating to the person what we have heard from them. And this was one of the things that I, time and time when I was learning these structures, I did it wrong. I was listening not to respond and to understand. I was listening, and at the same time already in my mind, I was formulating what I would say. What would be my point to win, this little mini battle, right? And it was so, in a way, it was never working because I was like, I'm trying to do all these steps, but there's something missing. And what was missing is that I was not relating to the person that I was listening to. So listen to understand would be the next stage. And this works beautifully in every part of our life. This could work with your business, with your spouses, with your friends, with your family. And all it is to relate to the person what they just said, but paraphrase through your prism, through your ears. And a lot of times I realized after trying to reiterate to the person what they just shared with me, that I was completely mishearing everything what they said. And I would share and they're like, no, that's completely not what I meant. And that was a big realization for me. So that will be something to really practice and relate to the other person. And only move on to the next step when they agree with you and they see and they say, yeah, this is exactly what I meant. We can move on. So that's another part. When you then share, you can share through the same method that I just shared. So fact, feeling, need, and request. And when it comes to that conflict, then within that mutual sharing and listening and responding, what will end up happening, you will level the playing field. Because most conflicts do not get resolved because this alignment is not done. So by listening and understanding, you bring yourself to the same level as the person that is sharing with you. And then you share and they bring themselves to the same level. So when you're at the same level of understanding, this is the only place where you can start repairing the actual conflict, what happened. And to repair a conflict, there is few ways to do that. First of all, and this differs from men and women. I will go for men first, and then we can go and talk about how to do that for women. So for men is we need to acknowledge the exact fact and behavior what has caused the conflict. Then we need to find the solution, and solution is first understanding what was the mistakes that we made and agree on them. Thirdly, we need to, as men, we are quite direct and straightforward, so it's easier for us. So then what we need to do is to find a solution of how we're going to avoid to make this mistake next time. And then we apologize, and then we ask for usually for men, when we apologize, usually based on those, if it's followed, those steps, it's an immediate forgiveness. It's like, listen, I understand that you went through this, you understand your mistake, you know how to avoid it the next time. That's usually enough for men to forgive. It differs where it comes to women. It's a little bit more complicated. And the reason it's more complicated is that we need to validate emotions where it comes to women at every stage of what I just shared. So when there's initial conflict, there's already amount of emotions that a woman would have with you, and vice versa as well. Conflicts with women create more emotions. So when that happens, first of all, these emotions need to be validated. So if I was right now apologizing to a woman by going through the conflict I had with her, I would first listen to the emotions and then validate those emotions in a way that would say, yes, I completely understand that my actions and behavior could make you feel this way. I didn't realize it would make you feel this way, but I hear you and I completely understand that this is your reality. So that one step is very important. And I see a lot of men trying to resolve conflict with women with skipping that step and then moving on to the solution. And that's our default, right? We are builders, we are solution orientated. And I feel that's one of the biggest mistakes that men make in any type of conflict with women. And me included, I've done that mistake many times. So after we've validated woman's emotions, what ends up happening, she already starts trusting us more because she understands that we know what we have caused. So that's number one. Secondly, we go into the place where the actual actions that we did that upset the person or created the conflict are being looked at. And in the same way as we find a solution, to avoid them. But within the umbrella of being able to frame it that the actual solution for avoiding it is connected also to avoid these emotions being triggered again on the woman. So that's step number 3. What then needs to happen is that once we have that solution and it's explained, then we would have to go into apology. An apology for women is different. And men, direct, we realize the mistake, we can move on. For women to apologize, we need to, again, bring it back through emotional pattern, relay it to the emotions that were caused, and then, first of all, say it. I realize all the mistakes, I realize all the things that I have caused you where it comes to the feelings, and I'm ready to apologize. And I see the mistakes, this is the solution that I will do the next time. And when we frame it this way, we also have to ask if a woman, based on that apology, is actually ready to forgive us. Because a lot of times when women are hurt, their feelings first need to be validated. And if we did a good enough job at the beginning of that conflict resolution, she may not be ready internally for herself to forgive us. So how I approach this is that you forgive, but also you apologize, but you ask for forgiveness as well. This is a component that is specific for women. And when we ask for forgiveness can be given immediately based on the quality of the apology and a resolution of that conflict, or a woman can say, actually, I don't feel I am able to forgive you now. I still need to feel into it or sleep on it. The best way you can lead this conflict resolution then for that woman is to say, okay, that's no problem. I understand that. I would like you to tell me how much time you need. Is it today afternoon if you had a conversation in the morning? Is it the next morning? The maximum you can give to the person is 48 hours. And there is a reason for that. At any conflict, you will be able to see as well on their other side if they're able to regulate their emotions and their nervous system. If at any stage of that conflict, the person becomes so unregulated that they need a week, that's already something that I would look into deeply, because for most adults that are emotionally regulated, it will not take more than 48 hours. I would even say 24 hours is plenty of time. So that will be something that you can lead, because this whole process is led by you. And not only in when you need to apologize, but also you can lead this for a woman or a man when you want to be apologized to. So then we have this last step. And then when the forgiveness is given, then you agree on the next steps, how you will learn from this and be able to avoid this conflict in the future. And that's basically it.
I think this is an amazing breakdown. And the first time I heard about these steps was actually from you, like a while ago. And of course, I'm also human. I also make mistakes, and I also, like made mistakes with my partner, with friends who are women. And I definitely feel that this approach works way better than the dude method, where like, hey, like, sorry, I messed up, like, my apologies, and like, I'm going to make sure it's not going to happen. It's just like, it doesn't work that way, right? So I think this is an amazing blueprint to follow. What came to mind is something that I experienced myself as well, and many of my friends experienced as well in the past. So I'm just referencing some conversations that I had with my friends when they had a conflict with their partner. And it sounds like this: man, I have no freaking idea what she wants. I don't know what she means, what she's saying doesn't make any sense. So I think it kind of like raises the question, what do most women truly want in a relationship that men maybe tend to overlook?
That's a great question. I think it's, if we started with that, we will lead next 2 hours.